Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kyle's Corner. I am joined today by two wonderful people I've wanted to have on here for a very long time, and I'm glad to finally have them on. We have Ben from Books with Benghis Kahn. He's been on the channel quite a few times, really good friend of mine. And we have Dr. Fantasy himself, Philip Chase. He is employing young thespians everywhere by giving them a chance to narrate his audiobook. So like we really got to give it up for that.
At least one young thespian. Yeah.
And one time we all were on a live together and it was Ben kicking our butt at Jeopardy.
I know this is a Jeopardy reunion here.
Yeah, Jeopardy
Oh,
reunion.
wow.
I didn't even consider that when I was like trying to pair guests. I just was like, oh yeah, like Ben and Philip. Maybe because I had already unconsciously coupled you guys together, but yeah, it's a Jeopardy reunion. So how are you guys doing today?
Alan. We're just missing Alan though. Yeah.
Maybe he'll pop in.
Yeah.
So how are you guys today?
We got Darko, Zamar in the chat. Lots of friendly faces.
Nice to see you guys.
I'm doing okay. Work has been busy, and I had a friend's wedding over the weekend. I'm a little under the weather, but
that sucks. I'm sorry
it's
to hear
nice
that,
to be able to take my voice to be a little lower, I think, than usual, but it's fine. It's not too bad, and I am just happy to set work aside for a few hours and chat books with two of my favorite people. So
I thought we were only talking about sports tonight. I thought that was the memo. Sports and what's something else that Philip wouldn't know much about? TVs, sports and TVs.
If we're talking sports, then you guys are gonna have to hear a lot of tennis talk. That's all.
Oh well, yeah. It's always nice to just like kind of chill after a long day. I started a second job in July, and it's just kind of like caught up to me now how tired I am. So I just feel like I'm constantly like I haven't been reading as much. The whole thing sucks.
How many hours a week are you working?
Well, so I'm only working like 40 hours a week because I work in the hospitality industry. So it's like each job is a part-time, but I'm working more in the daytime than I used to. So then I'm spending more time in the evenings with my wife, which is, obviously very good. But then I don't have any time to just like relax and read a book. And then I also work in the evenings some nights. So it's like whole life is in disarray. But
I gotcha. Yeah.
I have seen that you have 13 currently reading books on
Dude, don't stress me out right now, okay?
Wow.
It's insane. My goal is to finish all of those books by the end of November, and I won't, but I'm gonna try.
I don't even like reading two books simultaneously.
Yeah. Philip, I'm with you. When I'm reading two, inevitably my engagement is veering more towards one, and then I'll start to favor that, and at the expense of the other read, and it'll hurt my experience with both, dividing my attention. I don't even watch TV or watch movies these days, so what I like to do is just immerse myself in one book at a time. That is the only set of characters, the only plot the only world building that I'm thinking about for those days, and I just love getting lost in that one, writing style and Kyle, I see you're chomping at the bit.
For anybody making notes and taking bets, we made it 3 minutes and 9 seconds before Ben said the word immersion.
I didn't say. Did I say immersion? Did I?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I did.
You did say immersion. But I have not said Beowulf yet.
Oh well, there you go. We just got Yeah, no, and I'm totally. And the thing is I do the same thing where I'm like reading a bunch of books at a time, but then one will inevitably, like right now, I'm really into Fool's Assassin. So that is like the main book that I'm reading, and then when I'm reading The Word for World is Forest by Ursula K. Le Guin on my phone. So like whenever I have like 10 minutes or whatever, I just like open it and read a couple pages. So those are like the two. Yeah, my eyes still work, Philip. They weren't around for the witnessing of Stonehenge being created. They still got some juice in them. But yeah, so for instance, of those 13 books, like one of them is Wise Man's Fear, which I started in July and I read like 300 pages of, and then other things keep calling my attention to it. So like I'm still reading it, but I haven't read it in like 3 months. So what about you, Philip? What have you been reading lately?
Well, I haven't been reading on my phone, I can tell you that. So blindly poking away at it. But
you can do the big text. I see people do that.
Oh, is that a thing? Okay.
Yeah.
I probably should have that. But yeah, no, I'm actually reading The Fury of the Gods right now by John Gwynne.
Ooh.
Book 3
Nice.
in the
And
Blood.
how are you liking it so far?
I love it. I mean, that's my wheelhouse, really. I mean, it's inspired by a lot of Old Norse Viking stuff, and that's kind of my playground, so to speak. So yeah,
I can't wait. I can't wait. I loved all 7 Banished Lands books, so I can't wait to. I waited until this one came to me. And the last book is out because I had to binge all the Faithful and the Fallen books like one after the other, and so I knew something similar was probably going to happen to me. So I have waited, and likely this winter I'm gonna go through the trilogy.
nice. Yeah, I hope you'll enjoy it.
I keep forgetting you haven't read that trilogy, Ben. It just like I don't because
Yeah.
I just associate you with John Gwynne so much that
Yeah, I do
Um,
love his style so much.
I have finished Fury of the Gods, and it was a book that existed. I was
Ooh.
pretty disappointed with it, honestly.
Yeah, there's been a mixed reception to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I
Well.
said right in my review that like I think also I like Shadow of the Gods when it came out was my first John Gwynne book, and then that was also like the first review copy book I'd ever gotten. Like it was in like 2021 or whatever. So I was like new to reading fantasy, and I just think like my patience for like constant action has changed, so that definitely impacted it on this one. But I also think the climax was just like more predictable than I would have liked. But I didn't hate it. Like I still really like the characters in that trilogy, so that kind of like got me through it. But yeah, it was a disappointment for me.
It is an action, you know, fairly fast-paced book. So yeah, definitely. If anyone's going
to music to my ears.
We can see you, Laura. We can see you.
I have recently. I've been in the midst of my best year of my reading life this whole year. Recently finished The Realm of the Elderlings. Until I finished out the Fitz and the Full trilogy, I think I was still skeptical of Robin Hobb becoming a true favorite author of mine, or the series becoming a true favorite. But after this trilogy, I just could not deny it. I was fully in love with the series and Hobb's style, and I just left me wanting more. And I've heard she's still working on some more, so I hope we do get some more.
So.
But,
I love that.
I
finished it actually January of this year. So. And that was the ending of my Realm of the Elderlings. I think it's my second favorite trilogy, though, in the whole Realm of the Elderlings. I think Tawny Man edges it out for me, but not by much.
Yeah,
both tremendous.
My favorite is still live. My favorite is still Live Ships, but Tawny Man. Like the more I think about it, I think Fool's Errand might be my #1 favorite in the series. And Fool's Fate is still excellent. Like I really loved it. I do think that the how do I say this without spoilers? There's a central tenant relationship dynamic in that book that it relies a lot on that I never felt as attached to as some people. And so that maybe made it like, it's still like, you know, like it's in contention for my book of the year. Like I'm not slandering it all, but I just like, I do think that it's like, I was expecting it to be like my favorite of the series based on how people talk. And I think I still like Fool's Errand more.
Fool's Errand and Fool's Assassin. Now I say Hobb is the queen of middle books. That's one thing I say. Because, like, come on, Royal Assassin, Mad Ship. I thought just incredible middle books with Golden Fool and Fool's Quest. Maybe not the greatest titles for middle books, but Fool's Quest.
I don't think she's good at titles or names.
We could have done a little something extra with Fool's Quest, I thought. But she is amazing with these series resets with Fool's Errand and Fool's Assassin. And it's one of these.
I'm laughing at Kevin. Sorry.
No worries. It's one of these special things that only a very long-running fantasy series can do, where we reset after a time skip, and we just take some time to catch up with where the characters are. And it would be harder to take that slower pace if it was just like a new series or a new, you know, you've never met these characters before, but we care so much about them and Fitz from previous books and series that, like, catching up to him in Fool's Errand and Fool's Assassin just feels so special. Man, only a long-running fantasy series can offer that kind of thing.
Yeah.
One thing that's great about like Hobb is I didn't realize. So I've always been like a Fitz matter. I don't dislike him. Like a lot of people, if they don't like the series, it's common because they hate Fitz. And a lot of people, when they love the series, it's because they love Fitz. And for me, it's like I think Fitz is fine, but I love the series for like everything else. But it was in Fool's Fate that I finally realized. I was like, oh, she tricked me. I do like Fitz. And it took me 6 Fitz books to realize that I actually do really care about him. So that has actually made
with Fool's Assassin. You're in for it.
Fool's Assassin has already been very emotional. Like it's a very good book, and like nothing has really. I mean, things have happened, but like when you think of like, I mean, most of it is just like him thinking about stuff in the beginning of Fool's Assassin. Like it's a very insular book, and I
feel like every first book in a Hobb trilogy is a ton of just slice of life and sipping tea, and how many authors can get away with that today, and I actually love it. I'm there for it because I feel like she builds up so much attachment to the characters in the early parts of these books that has major payoff down the line, and I would not care nearly as much if I hadn't been so attached to the characters in the first parts. I love it.
And then the middle books, not that much tends to happen in say Golden Fool or Fool's Quest to like really move the overarching narrative along. There's chunky books and not so many important plot events actually occur in them, but they manage to be captivating nonetheless and really just set things up for the incredible finales so well.
Yeah.
And just amazing with the trilogies. I had some issues with the structure of the Rainwild Chronicles. I thought that would have been an absolutely amazing duology if we would have tightened up.
Or even a trilogy just to keep it. Yeah.
Darko there was asserting a fairly unusual
favorite.
take there.
I admire the take, Darko. I actually liked, so I just finished Rainwilds and I liked it way more than I was expecting, but it's still my least favorite. But that's just because, everything else with Hobb is just so good.
I've heard that the publisher was interfering with Hobb and like wanting her to catch on to the YA craze and lean into that and expand it into 4 books. And it just is weird to not have the whole overarching series symmetry where they're all trilogies as sub-series. I think that's a little odd, but I don't like that there might have been publisher interference going on with Hobb at that point, who's already many books in and a huge seller and should hopefully have the clout to not have to deal with that, which is something you don't have to deal with as being self-published, which is one of those great, nice things.
For sure. I don't have to listen to anybody. Right. But I do agree with Derry, though, when she says Rainwilds has the awesomest lore. So for me, Rainwilds was the least favorite in terms of character work, but I loved the lore. I loved the world building that Hobb did, and a lot of things clicked into place for me during Rainwilds, and it's where you really see the intertwining in a significant way of the kind of the 2 parts of this world that we've been with. I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but you know what I mean, right? So I love it for that, and I would never ever don't skip. Live ship is a lot of people would say, but don't skip Rainwilds either. Because there's a lot of important stuff there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had a thought. Oh yeah, Thymera sucks. That was what my thought was. Is I don't Thymera. I feel like brings down that whole subset for me. If it wasn't for her, I think would be one of the goats. We had a question earlier though. Before we move on, because I know Ben wants to talk about what he's been reading, which is, and only Philip and I can answer it. But Zamar asks, if one didn't love Faithful and the Fallen, is it worth reading Bloodsworn? What do you think, Philip?
Oh, I go first. Okay. Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's, I think there's a lot of, it depends on what you didn't like about The Faithful and the Fallen.
I agree.
If you're talking about like wordsmithing, just the craft of writing, in my opinion, John Gwynne has shown a ton of he's really elevated his craft. I think you can see it as early as Ruin in The Faithful and the Fallen, which for me was a real step up in terms of just the craft, the writing, the words on the page. And then that continues really more or less even through the trilogy that follows, A Blood and Bone. And for me, I think that he's done his best work in the Bloodsworn trilogy in terms of the prose, in terms of just the words and the writing and the craft. So if that's something you that was holding you back in terms of the early books in The Faithful and the Fallen, then I would say absolutely go for Bloodsworn. Now, if it's a matter of you not liking the way he portrays characters, which I personally love. I love the character relationships and the tropes that John Gwynne loves. He really does animal companions beautifully. He does found family beautifully. These are favorites for him. That doesn't change. So that kind of thing I think remains the same. So, but yeah, if it was a matter of just the craft, then I would say give Bloodsworn a try. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Ben?
Well, that is yet to be determined for me.
Yeah.
I am assuming I'm going to fall in love with Bloodsworn, but haven't dived in just yet. But Zamar's a bit of a stickler for prose. He's a writer, and so
except for the magicians.
He's looking out for the prose choices, I think, as he reads, unlike me. And so that is, if there's a big improvement there, then I think that could be right for Zamar.
To be boring, I totally agree with everything Philip said. Like, I think, like, I like Bloodsworn more than Faithful and the Fallen, but a lot of the like core elements that make what people love Faithful and the Fallen, I think he does in Bloodsworn. Yeah. The main difference is Bloodsworn is a little bit tighter, a little bit more focused, less characters, and better writing. I think, like, I do think he's upped his craft, and even in Wrath and Ruin, I do think that, like, because I remember reading Malice and I liked a lot of the setup, but I did feel like there was a little bit of awkwardness in like just the sentence by sentence structure, just speaking as a pleb. So, but I didn't like. I think Bloodsworn is very smooth, so that might be worth trying. Yeah. Also, I love the lore.
Speaking of prose, yes. How about that segue? I just finished the Sailing to Sarantium, Volume 1 of Sarantine Mosaic.
I'm so hyped.
Soon I will be reading Lord of Emperors. And Philip, I have discovered a new favorite author this year with Gavriel Kay.
Oh, GGK. Well, 2025 is my year of GGK, so.
Oh, I can't wait. Song for a
You're
Bone.
Just gonna love him.
I mean, I've read the one.
You've read Midgana for sure, yeah.
Tigana.
Oh, you read his first.
No,
you read Tigana, his first big novel. Okay, standalone. Okay, but I started with Song for a Bone, and then Lines of Alrasan, and A Brightness Long Ago, Sailing to Sarantium. It's been 4 masterpieces, perfect reads. Just I have been blown away by these books. I can't wait to see your year of GGK, since I think you're gonna fall in love with all those that I've read.
So too. I'm laughing at Laura. Yeah,
me too. I'm laughing at Laura. Yeah. Yes, Laura, I promise I will read Warlord Chronicles. Or if you don't read Warlord Chronicles in 2025, I will close down my YouTube channel.
We have to. So. We will keep on this subject, but really quickly, before this live, I was watching your weekly update just to see what you've been up to, Philip. And you held up Last Kingdom, which is a series I love, and we got to talk about a little.
Oh, cool.
And you said, I read The Last Kingdom 30 years ago. And I was like, did you really? And I went and looked, and we have confirmed that Philip is a time traveler because that book was released 20 years ago. So I think it's really interesting that you kept it, close to the vest. This is why you can be on so many.
Wait. I never even looked. But
yeah, it was 2004. But that's why you can be on so many live streams.
I read it a long time ago, whatever it was. 20 years.
20 years is pretty long.
It doesn't really make a difference at that point, does it?
No. I just thought that was funny.
It is funny.
Yeah, I have trouble remembering details from books I read like around 2010 at this point.
After a certain amount of time, it's all the same. It's like, Beowulf ruled for 50 years. Was it really 50 years, or was it just a long time?
Well, I find it like, look, I'm sure if I was to quiz myself on books I read in 2010, it would be fuzzy. But I find that, like, I reread what book was it recently? Jade City, and that had been like over a year since I'd read it, and I felt like I didn't even when I was reading it, I felt like I had just read it, which a year isn't that long of a time, but it felt like I remembered every piece of the book.
Oh, wow.
But then I just read Fevered Sun, the second book in Rebecca Roanhorse's Between Earth and Sky trilogy. And I read Black Sun in February, which wasn't that long ago. And I liked it a lot. And that whole book just fled from me.
Ooh.
Like I barely remembered anything. Like I remembered like 3 key scenes. And it really it took me a while to get into Fevered Star because I was just like, what is going on here, and who are these people? And it did eventually click in, but I think that was just because I was in the middle of like school and so it's tough to know what we're going to remember and what we're not going to,
And also memory is tied to emotion. And so if we don't have any strong emotional moments in a read, I think it's not gonna stick to us as well.
Wow. Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
Who, me?
Yeah.
He's reading Fear of the Gods.
Fear of the Gods. I'm also reading another action-packed book, which is of War and Ruin by Ryan Cahill. So I just said a while ago, I can't read more than one book at a time, but there you go.
You know, it happens to everybody. Like, you know, because there's so many books we got to read, and then we're like, like I know Jimmy recently was like, I'm going back to reading one book at a time, and then like literally the next month he was like starting 5 books, and it's like, Jimmy, you didn't even last a month. Like, and it's just, you know, it's difficult. You just gotta, you see all the shinies. I actually started a new book today, which I absolutely shouldn't, because I was reading 13 books, and Philip is gonna love this. I started the Silmarillion.
Oh, good. That I do like that.
Yeah. I don't know why it was. I just felt it in my bones. I was like, today's the day to start the Silmarillion. Like, I've wanted to read it since I was 11, and I just haven't. So
seize the day.
So it's just finished it's very different from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I feel like Lord of the Rings is kind of a beautiful sweet spot in between The Hobbit and the Silmarillion. Whereas Silmarillion is this high myth legend kind of, you know, whereas The Hobbit is very childlike, and Lord of the Rings has both, which is why for me it's the sweet spot, you know. But I don't know. I'll be curious to see how you find it.
Yeah, I loved Fire and Blood, and everybody always compares the two, and I'm so confident that it's going to be different. But I want to read the Silmarillion and be able to like talk about it.
Fire and Blood is fake history, whereas the Silmarillion is fake myth. So.
Yes, I'm aware. And yeah, I read the first chapter of the Silmarillion today. So I'm like, oh yeah. So I kind of see how it's like, you know, the creation story and stuff. And I expect to like it. I don't think it'll hit like, you know, Lord of the Rings level to me, but
did Guy Kay have a hand in writing? Did Guy Kay have a hand in writing it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was published after Tolkien's death, and who knows other than Gavriel Kay and Christopher Tolkien, how much of it is, you know, Gavriel Kay, you know, but he was definitely part of preparing it for publication.
Yeah. I went to a talk with Gavriel Kay last year, and somebody in the audience asked him why he doesn't ever go on like Stephen Colbert or like any of these people who like really like talking about Tolkien, because I guess at some point Stephen Colbert had mentioned wanting to talk to him about it, or I don't know. And Guy was just like, yeah, you know, like I really admired the time that Christopher asked me to do this, and it was a really rewarding period of my life, but it was like over 40 years ago, and I've done a lot of stuff since, and I just don't want to be continuously tied to this thing that I did in my youth when I have a lot of other stuff that I'm interested in. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's very fair. So and he was very, very gracious and kind about it, but you could tell that he's just like tired of being asked about it. But yeah, earlier I said Tigana is mid Ghana, and that's just a joke. I actually gave Tigana like a high 4 stars. Like I really liked it. It's just that was my first Gavriel Kay book. And I was like, wow, his prose is like really good. And I had some issues a little bit, but I was like, oh, but like his writing style is so good. And like there was like the villain I thought was great. And there was like a really good like female main character. And then I read like 8 other Gavriel Kay books, and I liked them all significantly more. So now I'm just like, I've joined the train of people that are like, no, don't start with Tigana. It's not as good.
I actually read it 30 years ago. You know what I mean by that?
For real. Like this is probably really 30 years ago this time.
I just say 30 when it was a long time ago. I read, you know, a bunch of things 30 years ago. But yeah, I did read Tigana once before, a long time ago, whatever it was. But I'm due for a reread. It is a book that I do remember a couple scenes from, though. So it did stick with me. So.
Oh, nice. I just finished reading Sailing to Strenkium, and I was doing that only in print because I actually did not like the narrator. I like to just have an audiobook going of the same book I have in print. So I go from reading like inside. If I want to go for a walk, I just throw on wherever I'm at in the book, I just continue. So I'm just immersed in the same book, but I did not gel with the narrator here. Maybe it's because of the American accent.
Quite a bit.
Maybe because of the American accent. I was used to the elegant British accent of Simon Vance or Ewan Morton for the previous Gavriel Kay books, but it was not working. So I was listening to a Bobaverse book, which is book 5 of that series that I've listened to all the audios for. So I cleared the decks. And then I wasn't reading anything. And so it was time to decide, I have an opening. can't start Lord of Emperors because I'm going to have a live chat about Sailing Serantium over the weekend with Buddy Regroup. So I just didn't know what to read. And I started The Way of Edan.
How about that?
Who's that by?
By
Some
Philip
schmuck.
Chase.
Oh, I've heard really bad things about him.
Probably
Like,
you have.
You should cancel him right now.
Yeah. And
are you listening to the audiobook, Ben?
I'm liking what Chase is doing here. It's an interesting start. I am doing it combo, hybrid, like I usually do, where I am reading it in print and listening to the audio as well. And I also like to, if I listen to a big chunk on audio, I'll go back and reread that section in print just to make sure I kind of digest everything and didn't miss anything. So I'm enjoying the narration by someone named Alan Walker. I saw in the details.
No, it's Adam Walker. Adam Walker.
Adam Walker.
It's Carl Adam Walker.
He's gonna love that.
But the narration's very lively, like really lively, different character voices, which I always appreciate. And yeah, I could tell also there's a lot of tough pronunciations in here, and the narrator did his homework to get these pronunciations correct and consistent.
We had a session where he was like, "How do you say this?" And I was like, I would say it, and he was like, "Oh my god, all right," and he recorded.
I want the outtakes so bad, just Alan just being like, "Philip," like.
So I'm 10 chapters in. Oh, Kyle also started it. Yeah.
No. Tell me what you're gonna say. You're 10 chapters in.
Oh, I'm 10 chapters in.
Okay.
Cool. And I am really into it so far. Cool. I must say, I'm enjoying the start of this series considerably more than the Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know.
Is there a Tom Bombadil-esque character? Because if not, if there is, I'll just go ahead and pre-DNF. Like,
I mean, the main character is based on Tom Bombadil, actually.
Really? Like, that's not a joke? Oh, that was a really good deadpan joke. I fell for that entirely. No.
But I must say, I am feeling myself getting dragged in, and what I don't like about that is that I like to binge things, and so I might just have to finish this out in print and not wait for the future audio editions. But I am feeling pretty attached to our couple of protagonist POVs so far, and then getting insight into the more antagonist side with some priest POVs has been really fascinating. I am loving what you're doing with the priests of Edan. It's feeling a little White Cloak inspired from. I don't know if that's all I like, but
I read Wheel of Time after I wrote that, but I can see why you would say that. Yep.
It's feeling somewhat similar, but I'm enjoying the execution of these priest antagonists much more than I ever enjoyed the White Cloaks. That always felt like a very clunky, one-dimensional side of the Wheel of Time. Yeah. And already I'm seeing just like major differences in the different priest characters so far, and they're the type of antagonists that really intrigue me, where it's they're not mustache twirly and seem to have really legitimate motivations and think they're doing the right things, or according to their religious beliefs or their personal moralities. And all that to say, I am loving that world building setup with the antagonists.
Wow. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, to be fair to Robert Jordan, the White Cloaks are just one little facet of a really vast story. Whereas for me, the priests of Edan are pretty central, to the whole story. So I was probably in a better position to give them a little nuance, I guess, there. But I'm so thrilled. Yeah. And there's Joanna. So I'm so thrilled. And watch out for assassin elves in there. Ben, speaking of assassin elves, there's Joanna.
I know you read this like many years ago, right? Oh, sorry. Go for it, Kyle.
I was going to say, I wanted to be done the book by the time we started it. And then I read the first 2 chapters and then just got distracted. But I am going to go back. And what I want to say is that I always knew Alan would do a good job. Like I've seen Alan act. I've heard him do voices. I was never. This is not me being like I secretly thought he wouldn't do. I knew it would be good, but he blew my expectations out of the water. It is.
Yeah.
It is so good that if anybody who like hasn't listened to it should just go give it a try. Like I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Ben listens to a lot of audiobooks, and I'm not saying it because Alan is my friend. I genuinely think this is like expert tier, top level narration. Yeah. I'm just so impressed. And we need to get him to narrate more books. And so, Philip, I'm so glad that you took a chance on him and just
I have to give
believed in him.
I have to give credit to Jimmy because it was actually Jimmy's idea that I asked Alan to do it. And I'm just thrilled that Alan did it. I don't know why we keep calling him Alan. His name's Adam Walker.
So it's because we don't respect him enough to know his name.
So anyway, he really did such a. I mean, you guys are who are hearing it. You can hear that it sounds very professional, and the reason for that is A, he's very talented, but B, he really worked hard on this. I mean, he really did. That's why it took him so long to get it out because he really did it professionally. I was just every step of the way. He worked with sound engineers. He consulted with people who are established audiobook narrators. He just did his homework in every conceivable way and knocked it out of the park because he put so much effort into it and did such a tremendous job.
Yeah. And I use noise canceling headphones, and I've listened to so many thousands of hours of amazing audiobook narration and production. And so I'm pretty sensitive when I feel like the recording quality is subpar or like in the first few Dresden ones, you could tell there's lots of like mouth noises, extra breathing. Like when that isn't all edited out, like it can be distracting. But yeah, the actual audio production of this is just up to par. Absolutely. Yeah. So for someone who's doing this for the first time, I'm amazed at it too. There's just the occasional like awkward splice where it may be like the right exact like milliseconds, weren't left between one sentence and the next sentence.
Yep.
But that is such a tiny thing, and only happens occasionally. And so it is astounding. It is astounding.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier, really.
I think
Go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think what Derry's saying here, I forgot it was my friend Alan, is like a huge compliment because that is something that I was worried would distract me. It's like, no matter how good he was, I would just be like, oh, this is just Alan. But like, 10 minutes in, 5 minutes in, I was just like, oh, this is just a really good narration. So yeah, no, killer. What were you going to say?
I also, I was going to say, I'm loving Dayraven, our country boy who is needing to go on a quest. Like this is something I just love, a character, archetype and plot setup that I have always connected to, whether it's Corben and Faithful and the Fallen or Rand in Wheel of Time. It's he's so decent, and at the beginning it's so easy for me to connect to him. And when he was in a little bit of danger among his own townsfolk at the beginning, like it's so soon into this. Like I know he's not actually in danger yet, but I was really, really worried for him and what was going to be happening, and the threat that you created with the townsfolk kind of turning against one of their own. Man, that was stupendous early series tension right there. So
that's fantastic. Not everybody loves him in the first place. There's Tom in the chat there, who I think Tom, by the end of it, Tom's read the whole trilogy. So I think that Dayraven maybe grew on some readers as they progressed through the trilogy. But I'm thrilled that you are already feeling connected to him that way. That's fantastic. I think he's nice.
And the other POV, a little mysterious, Sequara is the name.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying. We've gotten a couple of those POVs so far. Really, really liking that POV as well. So I'm happy, which is in a multi-POV book, you want to be in a position where you're excited whenever the POV changes to get more time with that character or in that location. And so far that's the case. So I think this bodes well because it sometimes takes me a while to get in the flow of things with a new series, a new author style instead of world building, but it's reading just very smoothly and I'm enjoying everything about it so far. So far, so good.
I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you even for reading it. Honestly, anyone who gives it a shot, I'm grateful for that. And if it connects, then I'm really happy. Yeah. So thank you for giving it a shot. And I really am so pleased with Alan's performance. It's just it's actually the only audiobook I've ever listened to from start to finish. So I am, unlike you two, I'm terrible when it comes to audiobooks. And it's weird because I know the story pretty well, but I was riveted to his performance.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just fantastic.
That's almost an even better endorsement that you were able to finish one. Like, I'll finish anything. I'll finish a sack of weeds just going in the eardrums, like, but one thing I did want to say is, there's lots of like art for series that are like landscapes. And like, I like a landscape shot, but for the most part, it never like makes me want to read the series. I think maybe the exception would be like the new covers that the Broken Binding did for like to Green Angel Tower. I think it's just beautiful.
Oh, those are great.
But when they did the cover for Way of Edan, just like, I don't know what it was. It's just like so cozy feeling. Like I just got this like sense of like when I first read Lord of the Rings, just from the artwork. And I was like, this is just a beautiful scene of these like 2 or 3 people like just chilling in a field. And it just like, I don't know. I maybe want to like stop what I was reading and pick it up, but I have too many books. But I will finish it by the end of the year, Philip, and then I'll give it 1 star.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. No, I love that new cover for the Broken Binding Special Edition, and it does really convey, for me anyway, the tone and the atmosphere of the opening chapters, at least. And that's I don't think it's a spoiler to say that's Kinsford. That's where Dayraven is from.
I figured, yeah.
It's meant to be kind of dripping with that fantasy nostalgia kind of feeling. And I think by the end of the trilogy, especially, it takes on more poignance, I hope, for somebody who's read the whole trilogy to see that place. So yeah. Is this question from Derry?
Yeah, she says, did Alan bring anything unexpected to the story for you, Philip?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like when someone does art and it doesn't, like the guy who did the art that we were talking about, his portrayal of, say, Sequara, doesn't match exactly what I had in my head. But I see it and I think, wow, that's a really cool interpretation. I love that. Same thing with Alan's voices. I never thought certain characters would sound the way he made them sound. He does different accents and voices and all kinds of stuff. And but I try to embrace the fact that this is Alan's performance of this. It's his interpretation of this story. And he brings something to that, which is, unique to him. And for me, that's what makes it alive. That's what makes it interesting. It is a performance. It is, to me anyway. And I don't know how you guys feel, because you tell me how you feel if you disagree with me. But I do feel that listening to an audiobook is a slightly different experience than reading a book, because you are listening to a performance, and that person who is reading it is bringing something to that performance, is emphasizing a certain, say, tone with a certain character, or, and that changes the way you maybe think about that character. So I just try to embrace it all and say, okay, that's what Alan's doing with his character. Let him go. I trust him because I think he's brilliant and he's really great at this. I completely trust him to just go ahead and do it. And I enjoy what his choices. I think they're fantastic, and the way direction he takes the characters. Just as a small example, he chose to do a kind of American accent for the key people from the Mark, like Dayraven and Ebba, and he does more. He tends to do more of a British accent when he does people from Torland, for example. And at first I was like, oh, that's interesting, but I understood why he did that. The people of the Mark are a kind of colony of Torland in a sense, and that relationship early on in American history between America and England, that's actually a pretty nice, I thought, insight that he provided by doing that. I never, told him to do that. He just did it on his own. I thought, cool, you go, Alan, So yeah, he brings the characters alive in his own unique way. And yeah, I couldn't be more happy.
I find when I listen to an audio, I start hearing those voicings, even the way the kind of default narration works when I am reading it in print, and which is good for me because it just spices up my experience. Because when I'm reading in print without audio, I'm not.
It has
really
to be a good narrator, though.
True, but I'm not doing much internal performance when I'm just reading alone in print. Like I'm usually reading pretty speedily, and when I listen, I'm actually going more slowly than when I read. Even if I'm listening a bit sped up, it's usually still I'm going through it more slowly, and so I have more time to be visualizing everything, and the performance is always feeling like it enhances usually, unless there's things about it that irk me. But so if I'm only reading in print, I'm not much of an actor or voice actor. Like I'm not performing, and so I love that performance aspect, and no doubt that it changes the experience. But usually for me, I think for the better.
Yeah. I recently, so my last read of A Song of Ice and Fire, like last year, I discovered the YouTube channel David Reads A Song of Ice and Fire, which for anybody who does not like the Roy Dotrice narration, I super recommend it because I think David is really good. I think his like regular narration is really good, and I think most of his characters are really well done. I had two major gripes, and they're just gripes. Like I listen to all of Dance with Dragons with his narration, but one is he pronounces Melisandre, which just like honestly go to jail. Like I don't understand why you would do that. And then the second thing is like his interpretation of Stannis was like he like basically like grumbly yells at everyone. Like no matter what he's saying, he's like this like oi, rah, rah, rah. And I'm like, this is just not my mental picture of Stannis at all. So every single Stannis scene was just like way different than I felt that it was. But there's no saying that like that isn't how Stannis speaks. And it's just like after spending so much time reading Stannis with my own brain, to then hear someone be like, every time Stannis speaks, he's like yelling at someone. I'm like, I don't. So that was like really jarring for me. So yeah, I totally agree. Like people's performance can bring out different aspects of characters and stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel that way.
Philip, when did you write like a full first draft of the Way of Edan? I know you were more recently editing it with AP Canavan, right? But like when was like an original first draft of it all done?
I started in 2004 and I finished in 2007.
Okay.
That's actually so by 2007 I was done with books 1 and 2. With what would become books 1 and 2, because I ended up expanding on them a fair amount. But yeah, the first draft of books 1 and 2 was done by 2007. Yep. And then I wrote book 3 a bit later. So I was in my 30s when I wrote book 1 and 2. I was in my 40s when I wrote book 3, and I had read Malazan before writing. I had read it one time at least before writing book 3, and I feel at least that reading Malazan, and I've said a couple times before, it freed my imagination in a way that influenced the way I wrote. I would never say that book 3 is Malazan-like or something like that. It's not, but it freed my imagination in a way that I think accounts for what I was doing in book 3, which is different.
Knowing that, I'm gonna definitely keep an eye out for just a Malazan influence that maybe wasn't there in the first 2 books.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but I do feel that I was doing something different in book 3. Yeah.
You mentioned that John Gwynne. Go for it.
No, go ahead.
You mentioned that John Gwynne, you feel like it's a spiritual kinship with John Gwynne in many ways. Maybe a lot of the same influences going back, and but it's just fun because I know you wrote this before even reading The Faithful and the Fallen.
I wrote this long before I read it.
It's fun to see just like a convergence, like, you know, with Corbin traveling around with his bondsman Gar, and kind of, you know, Darehaven traveling around with his family bondsman Imhar. Just like it's so nice for me to be able to see, you know, a convergence like that happen separately with and I've seen a lot of, just in the overall vibe, maybe some similarities too with Faithful and the Fallen.
I love it. I mean, Mark Lawrence and Jenny Wirtz both compared The Way of Edan to John Gwynne's writing. So I'm like, yeah, great. I love it. And bring it on. But yeah, I hadn't read anything by John until well after I had finished the whole trilogy. I didn't read anything by John Gwynne until I started a YouTube channel. So yeah.
Yeah, weren't you like pretty into just rereading Lord of the Rings before your channel? Like it was like Lord of the Rings and like American Gods and stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I had read actually American Gods was later, but I read a lot of Tolkien and Le Guin, especially when I was younger. My first series was Lloyd Alexander's Chronicle of Prydain, which I read when I was like 11 years old. Yeah, I would loved Lord of the Rings so much. I reread it every year. Along with The Hobbit and The Silmarillion, and so yeah, I was pretty into that. I read a lot of the the unfinished tales and all that stuff too. It's been a while since I've touched those, but yeah, I was really into it. Yeah, and for me, of course, you hadn't really read it unless you read all the appendices and everything else. So
yeah, when I was a kid, I remember like I know that how much Lord of the Rings affected. So I read it 2 or 3 times when I was like really young, like 11 to 13. Like I just reread Lord of the Rings a bunch, and then I didn't read it again until like 2020. So it had been like a long time.
Okay.
And in my head, there's a you're gonna know what page this is, but in my head, after the Battle of Pelennor Fields, in my memory, if you had asked me, there had been like a whole long section where they like list all of these characters who die.
Yep.
And to me, it was like this like horrendous, like it's like you lost all these people and all these people and all. And I remember being like no. And I read that page and I was like in 2020, and it's literally they're just like like Grimbold died, and like these guys, and then like it's like literally like 5 paragraphs. But as a kid, I had latched so much on to the world that Tolkien had built that like even these like little bit names, I was like, no, like Grimbold died, like, and so in my head I had built it up to this like catastrophe, and then I read it and I was like, 99% of people reading this would not even remember who they just said died. But I'm like, it's just funny, and that's how much it affected me. Like it was just like in my DNA of just like this is what I live and breathe.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
But I did have a question about like your writing process as time has gone on, because so you wrote Edan over a long period of time, and then you like went back and edited it, and then as you said, you've read Malazan now, that's now your favorite series. You've read all of these like wonderful series that you really like, Mark Lawrence and John Gwynne and Jenny Wirtz and all of these people, and now you're reading the you're writing like the standalone sequel, right? Yep. How do you think that has changed your process or your influences in the story with all of this new influence?
Yeah. That's kind of what Joanna is asking too there in the chat. But yeah. I think I'm interested after I finish this standalone to see what comes out of me after reading all this fantasy, after being on my quest to find the best of fantasy for all these years, which started actually long before I started the YouTube. I didn't know about YouTube at all. I think YouTube, I started writing my books when like YouTube started being a thing. Like, isn't YouTube only going back to like 2004 or so?
2005, yeah.
Oh, so my book's older than YouTube. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there you go. You can print that right on the cover. Older than YouTube, younger than Stonehenge.
Yes, there we go. Somewhere in between. But yeah, no, I think you do have different concerns slightly in your 30s to what you maybe feel in your 40s. And now I'm in my 50s and writing, and it does change your outlook to some degree. And maybe your preferences and your tastes, you maybe are more interested in certain questions than you were before. Though to me, it is a continuous process, and it literally has been as I've worked on those books. I worked on them for basically 2 decades. So it was a process of going back and meeting my younger self quite a few times, and sometimes saying, "What were you thinking, you idiot?" And then sometimes saying, maybe you had something different, and maybe this guy wasn't such a moron, So yeah, it's been an interesting dialogue with myself, looking over these books for so long, which is not, by the way, if anyone's ever thinking of writing and making a living from it, don't do what I did. You know, that is not how you make a living from writing.
You got that professorism to keep you going. You know, you can take 20 years.
Yeah, I got my day job. Yeah.
Did AP Canavan, did he come in as like in the late stage of the process, just as
Very
like an editing assassin with like the occasional incisive comment here in this chapter, here in that chapter, or was he just like the red pencil all over every page? Like what was it like working with him?
Well, when you hire AP, you're getting the full treatment. So you know he's gonna. And I took a lot of his suggestions and made changes, which I think were really compelling and made the story better. There's a certain character that I've talked about. I won't mention here right now, but there's a certain character that I had originally killed at the end of book 1 that AP convinced me I shouldn't. And so I didn't. So originally, that character didn't survive book 1 though, and so that involved some changes. Fortunately, I had created another character in the second book that I could just basically steal his identity and give it to. I had to tweak some things, but I kept that character alive, and it turned out to be actually a really brilliant decision. So that's probably one of the biggest examples. Then there were times when, you know, if you get to book 3 and read it, the structure is unusual at the end, I would say. Although a lot of people, well, I'll let you get there. But AP suggested to me that you might want to think about changing this because this is an unusual way to finish a book. And I thought to myself about it, and I eventually thought, no, I think I need to keep it the way I have it. So there's an example of a time, and that's how it is with a developmental editor. Sometimes you realize, oh yeah, this is really going to add to my vision if I change it this way. And then other times when you think, no, I think I need to keep it the way it is because this is more true to what I'm trying to accomplish here. Sometimes it works, you know, but I'm very happy with that ending. And most people, I feel AP is right like 99.9% of the time. So that 0.1, I have to really celebrate and emphasize.
So, well, he is your nemesis, so you gotta take your wins when you get them.
Exactly.
For my secondary, I see the most praise for the third book. I don't know about specifically the ending. I try not to look at specifics, but I have seen a lot of people like the whole trilogy, but really like the third book. So
I think that's a kind of consensus. There are exceptions, Chaz likes the first book the most. You know, so there are a few people here and there, but mostly that's the consensus, I think. Yeah.
I think the magic system around the barriers between yourself and everything else in the world being broken down and feeling connects to everything is awesome. I love that idea. Is there a particular kind of inspiration for that you took? I know I've read one translation of the Tao Te Ching and I didn't understand most of it. But
me either. Let's go.
I
just read Ken Liu's version and I was like, whew.
It was interesting, but is something like that a little like Taoism or a little bit of a inspiration or just some of the ideals behind Hinduism and Buddhism, I guess, where you're kind of losing your own ego and becoming one with everything. Is there a very specific influence for it?
Yeah. So I as you know, Ben, I lived in Nepal, and I can't say I'm an expert on Hinduism and Buddhism, but I am a fan. And I've read a good number of books about Hinduism and Buddhism, mostly more philosophical, but I've also read some of the old, like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and the great old epics. And I'm very interested in the philosophy, the just Buddhism in particular as a way of just living your life. But yes, you absolutely hit on something important there for me, which is the insight in Buddhism that we're all going to die, which is okay. That's not exactly news, but there's an emphasis on the idea that life is fleeting, and I am fleeting. I'm just a little fellow in this universe here. And secondly, not only am I fleeting, but I'm also, though, and this is sort of interesting to me, part of everything. that I am connected to not just everyone, but everything around me, all the life around me. And what I do has repercussions on that web of life around me as well. So those are ideas that are at the heart of the magic that I try to bring to life in the story, very much so. And I do get a lot of that from my interest in Hinduism and Buddhism. Yeah.
I'm already feeling like that's something that's really setting it apart from basically every other fantasy series I've read. And it has a classic-ish feel in the setup, but a lot of interesting flavors like this that I've not experienced before, and so it's kind of cozy settling into this, but refreshing at the same time. So yeah, just
cool.
You know what I like about you, Ben? Yeah. You are 65% a hater. But when we hit that 35% of you, that's like, you just gush, man. Like, you are all or nothing all the time. Like, most of the time I'm talking to you, you are just full blown hating on something. But then you could just be like, I'm 10 chapters into this book, and let me tell you everything I love about it. And I'm not even being facetious. I think it's a really endearing part of your personality. Yeah,
I love watching Ben talk about Dresden Files, for example. To see the joy on his face, just lighting up the whole place. It's just what we live for here on BookTube, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when Ben started his channel, he was on a Discord that I was on, and so we had talked, like we were friends. But he was just like your perception of someone changes when you've seen them actually talk versus when you just see. And I just had this perception of this dude that was just like angry all the time, and then, and because he would just rant about nothing, like just all the time. And then he does his first video. He was like, "Hi, it's Books with Benghis Kahn. Here's the book that I'm reading, and it's so good." And I'm like, "What is this happy man doing on my screen?" And then then you see all of his stuff in a different flavor, and then I realize that it's just because I'm a lot of the same way. I'm giving Ben a little bit of shit here, but I will pick on anything that, like, even if I love it, like Sanderson is like my favorite author, and he does plenty of stuff that I'm like, that's kind of dumb, but I just have to say it and then it's out. And I think, Ben, you're kind of the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Meanwhile, definitely. Philip loves everything.
I mean, there are a few things I don't talk about that I didn't enjoy so much, but for the most part.
Do you have an example? Does it start with, is the initials WOT?
No, I actually liked Wheel of Time.
I thought it was you that didn't like Wheel of Time. Was it maybe AP that didn't like Wheel of Time?
AP liked it less than I did.
Oh, okay.
It's fair to say. But I will say I did read the what's Terry Goodkind's series called?
Oh, you're punching down. Nobody likes that series.
There are people who love it. It
was very popular in its day.
Yeah,
Wizard's First Rule is the first book.
I read the first 2.5 books before I said, no, I'm sorry. I just can't do this anymore. But yeah. So I don't know. Oh no, Evie, don't worry. I liked The Vanished Birds. I really loved it, actually. And I do want to read The Spear Cuts Through Water as well.
I think you will love The Spear Cuts Through Water.
Okay. Yeah.
Ben, I don't know about you. Like, not saying you dislike it for sure, but it's very weird structurally. I don't know.
I'm gonna give The Vanished Birds a go first. I do have The Vanished Birds. That's probably a good idea. So I'm gonna start with that one.
Oh, there you go. Brian's got. So I did DNF the worm Ouroboros. That's true. I DNF that. Yeah.
Yes, and Brian liked it for his DNF challenge, or liked it more than a lot of the other ones. Anyway,
I was surprised. Brian was just kind of warm on it. Yeah.
I generally speaking don't like rant reviews. Like, obviously,
I'm not.
I like them. Yeah, I like them more when it's like somebody like Petrick, who is like 99% of the time is positive, and then just that 1% of time you're just like, yeah, let the hate flow. But that being said, Daniel Green has like a rant review of Wizard's First Rule that I thought was just an excellent takedown. If anybody wants to watch that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Kyle's rant review of Skullsworn by Brian.
Yeah,
Staveley.
I did one. I can never make fun of anybody who does rant reviews now because I have one. But you know what? I felt a lot better after I got that out of my system.
So Philip, I brought a little show and tell. I want to convince you to put a new. Not that you need to add anything to your TBR. You probably have a TBR lasting you many years.
I do,
but you probably have not really heard of this outside of like a wrap up on my channel. But Kyle encouraged me to buddy read this with him, and I never heard of it. And I thought I had heard of most kind of like adult fantasy series kind of published in the last like 10 years. So this was so off my radar. And it was such an enjoyable, tight trilogy. That is The Empire of Salt by Khan Iggulden.
Oh, okay.
We have Darien, Shang, and the Sword Saint. It's kind of the overall arc of the trilogy is very much the thematics around like an East meets West kind of cultural kind of exchange, and coming to befriend and appreciate
is this not historical fiction? Because I always associated him with historical fiction.
Yeah.
No, this is his only fantasy trilogy, but yes, it is. That's why it's C.F. Iggulden. And I think that's the main reason why this trilogy isn't more well known, because it is very solid. And the couple of people we've gotten to read it have all really liked it. Like I haven't, like I think it's an undervalued gem. And I think it's because his publisher, and he said this, his publisher didn't want, because he releases a book of historical fiction every year, like clockwork. And I think his publisher didn't want him to release fantasy in the same year as a historical fiction and confuse the market or whatever. So he did this, like he was releasing 2 books a year for 3 years. And
I think that was a mistake.
I agree. Yeah, it did not work very well. And Darien is such a good, like over time, I think this is maybe my favorite of the 3, although Sword Saint is really good too. But yeah, you liked it more than me, Ben. So you tell them the
they're all pretty short and snappy. Like he does not spend any time like just slowly building up. Like this is just like pared down world building, like taking place in kind of just like an alternate version of Earth. Like he's not interested in really like geographic world building and throwing lots of new world building terms at you. So it's a very different approach than kind of the Edan trilogy, where it's establishing this big continent. So this is just like we start with a city state, and we don't know about anything else going on the map outside of this one city state. And everything happens around this one city state in this book. And then in the second book, we learn about the city state to the east, Shang, and then some characters are traveling from Shang to Darien, and there's the kind of east meets west kind of vibe, and so it's like a really tightly focused kind of trilogy that gets moving really fast and is kind of a mixture, I think, of character driven and plot driven, with some really great action scenes and really creative use of magic, with kind of these magical artifacts that are kind of hanging around from an older ancient time, and people are using them now, and they all do something different. And it was just like, I felt like it was an author who had been stuck writing historical fiction, like stuck to the historical like realities and sources, and finally his like creativity and imagination was just unleashed, and he was just throwing all these creative ideas out there. And it was, I thought it was really thrilling time, and the closest in the overall feel of the voice to that I've come to the First Law books by Joe Abercrombie. Like I felt I felt like they like cleverness in the dialogue, kind of, but and
I was thinking more Scott Lynch, but I can see Abercrombie,
But
Scott Lynch is more like swearing and stuff.
I like Scott Lynch too. So yeah. Okay.
I think the economy of character building is great.
Yeah. It's definitely gritty, but like more on the optimistic side than the grimdark side. And so just a great little tight trilogy for when you want something that will go a little faster or go down easier than, say, those giant Jenny Wirtz books, or when you're needing more of like a fantasy palate cleanser. These could be great choices.
Cool. What's the trilogy called, Ben?
Empire of Salt.
Empire of Salt.
Which is really like
trilogy.
The older. Oh yeah, go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna. The whole trilogy is less than 1,000 pages. Like, it's very tight.
Okay.
And the third book actually packs in so much plot and still has good characters like that are introduced in the third. Like, I'm actually, now that I'm thinking about this trilogy again, I'm actually just really impressed at how much he can like set up and pay off so many individual strands in such a short novel. And then also have like, he'll introduce a character for like 5 pages, and you're like, oh, that's like a really good character. Like, I think it is really well written.
Yeah, every single character, from the main characters to the side characters, ended up being more nuanced and complex than I first thought, kind of when they were introduced. And I thought, oh, this is this kind of character. And then they became more complex and nuanced over time than I first thought. So the character writing was fantastic. And each book kind of has its own plot, and yet the entire series really comes together really well over the course of the 3 books too. So just I think it'll appeal to you, Philip, in particular, just with some of the East meets West.
Yeah, that right there got me. And then you said Abercrombie, and now I'm really thinking I had better pick this up. Yeah.
Yeah, just
I will say for anybody listening,
yeah,
it's not as funny as Abercrombie. Abercrombie's way funny.
But where I felt like the experience was similar, because I loved going through the first law books. I felt like Abercrombie's real strength is this injecting so much lively voice into all the different characters, both internal monologues and dialogue. And so this distinctive voice with all these different characters too. It's not the same voice for the different ones. And this series was the first time I think the closest I'd come to feeling that same type of lively, distinctive voices among all the different characters. And maybe not to the same extent as Abercrombie, but definitely that it reminded me of that experience in a way that really none other modern fantasy has before.
Wow. That's okay. I think you just sold a bunch of people, including me. So yeah, nice. Okay, it's Empire of Salt,
2028.
Buddy read.
I'll reread it. I'll reread it.
Oh, I'll reread it too. I would love to actually chat about these, because we kind of just did a buddy read and then never really chatted about it.
Yeah, and then too much time went by, and I was like, I don't really remember the specifics as well. But Philip, I wanted to talk to you. We
actually have an interesting buddy read. If you want to change topic.
No, this is actually, we're talking about the same thing.
This buddy read, actually, we did an experiment where since Kyle usually reads so many different books at once, also listens to audio books at super fast speeds, like 2.5 to 3 times speed, right? Like is your sweet spot. And so
around
not
3.
With Alan though. If you listen to Alan, you won't.
No, Alan's too fast. You can't do that.
I wanted to pose a hypothesis that we would test in an experiment to see if slowing down the audiobook speed and just reading one series at a time would affect Kyle's reading experience, or the impact it would have, maybe his immersion level while reading, or even just not necessarily the immersion level, but just by just reading one series at a time, maybe just thinking about those characters, the plot of that one series for those few weeks would have an impact on the experience or change it, versus if he's reading a lot of different series all at once or books all at once.
Okay.
And I've never actually gotten to hear the results of the experiment on that front. And so
I feel like I told you in Discord, but I can tell you.
I know that it didn't help you get necessarily like that full reading flow immersion that I talk about, or that Joanna talks about. But I still wonder if, because you had a great time with the series, if you think that just being able to focus on the one story did add to it.
Well, Ben, since we've done this, there's been an update in my life, which is my wife told me that she thinks I have ADHD. And I said to her, lovely wife, what makes you think that I might have ADHD? And she had quite the defense. Some would say she had been thinking about it for a while, and I was like, oh, interesting. And she convinced me immediately. I didn't need more thoughts about like going to get tested. And I was like, interesting. So then I looked up the symptoms of ADHD. I'm like, oh, I have like almost all of these. I probably have ADHD. And I was like, why now after 10.5 years are you telling me this? And she's like, I just thought you weren't ready to hear it. So all is to say, I'm now pretty sure I have ADHD, which is probably a big reason why I read so many books at the same time, to like,
make sense.
continue the flow of dopamine. And, because of haven't considered that I have ADHD, I've never tried any strategies of like focusing. So I'm just like, ooh, new shiny. Now, all that is to say, reading Darien or Empire of Salt straight together, I don't feel had any effect on my enjoyment. Like, I happen to really like it, but I just think I would have happily really liked it anyway. Especially because it's like pretty episodic. Like the third book ties everything together, but like the first two especially are like essentially standalone stories. So you don't really need that narrative flow in that series. It might help in series where I'm like more middling on it, because like, for instance, when I said about Fevered Star, I wasn't crazy about that book, and I had spent 10 months not reading After Black Sun. So that might have, like, if I had read it right after one another, I might have been more high on that book because I would have been more in the flow of things. But if I'm already liking a book, I don't think it really matters. Like, I took a long break in between some First Law books. I took a long break in, like Mistborn Era 2. Like, I do long breaks in lots of series, and it doesn't really affect me. And I just felt like I enjoyed it the exact same amount. I just enjoyed it faster because I didn't divert my attention in any other way.
Yeah, that's definitely so different than me. I'm currently reading a few series, or have been the last few years, where I've been reading new releases where they're releasing them kind of a book a year. And so like the Richard Swan whatever Empire of the Wolf books with Justice of Kings, and then I really liked that and wait a year and read book 2. I was so out of the flow of that story, I just couldn't get back in. Same with the new release trilogy of Ed McDonald with the Red Winter Chronicles. I took so long to get back into the flow and felt like I'd forgotten key character details. And when a series really just picks up from where it left off, and like you said, Empire Saw is a little bit episodic in having really defined narratives in each book. So it's less of this, but man, I lose so much momentum with a year if I have not continued a series. So binging, just where all of the details are as clear as they possibly can be from previous books. I'm catching every little reference the author's throwing into previous things, or trying to at least, and don't have the interference of thinking about lots of other plots and characters and world building terms. And it helps me, I think, stay immersed and also just maximize my emotional investment and engagement on details and things. So I'm definitely so different on that front, and it's great. Yeah. It's great that you can pick up after a year and feel like you're not losing anything.
I'm reading. I'm making myself put other things down and read The Warrior Prophet in December. Like I have to read it because it's been 1 full year since I've read The Darkness That Comes Before in December. And I'm like, if I wait longer than a year, this is going to be detrimental. Like I have to read it. So it is now starting to affect me more because I'm in the middle of like 30 series. And so like I can't keep them all on the same bandwidth. So like now it's starting to get to a point where I'm like DNFing series that I'm more middling on more than I would. But yeah, before I ask Philip his opinion, because I was going to ask him the same thing. I was going to start with how Philip affects and then go into the explanation. One thing that I notice is that, today, for instance, I'll give you my rundown of what I read just today. I listened to Project Hail Mary. I listened to Rhythm of War. I read The Word for World is Forest. I read The Silmarillion. I read, what else did I read? I read a little bit of Fool's Assassin, and I read the end chapter of the Tao Te Ching. And that's like, I had a busy day. Like, I just switched through stuff because I can't even explain it. I'm just like, when I'm sitting down, I'm like, oh, I want to read a little bit of this. And then like, I was watching The Wire, and I've seen The Wire a bunch of times, and it was like it's an episode that like has some stuff in it that I'm just not as big of a fan on. So I was like, I'll just read The Word for World. So I'm just reading Gwynne while I'm watching The Wire, which I don't recommend. And I just like bounce all over the place. And I don't think for the most part it affects my enjoyment of stuff. Like I'm sure it has. But all things considered, the benefit is that I read way more than I would otherwise. Because if I stick to only the times where, like, if I only want to, like, if I'm reading Midnight Tides and I'm only going to read when I feel like reading Midnight Tides, it might take me 2 weeks to read Midnight Tides. But if I'm reading it over 2 months, in that 2 months, it might take me longer to read it, but I'm reading whenever I want to. So I read 20 books during that time. So, but Philip, I noticed that you also juggle a lot of series, not as much for as long as a period, but what do you think your thing is? Like, is it harder for you to get immersed if you take a longer period of time, or how does that work for you?
I actually like interspersing my various series where I'll read one book from a series and then I'll read 2 or 3 or 4 other series before I get back to that first series. And I like changing things up a bit. But I could not imagine on the daily basis reading like 6 different books. I just could not do that. So I tend to be most of the time reading one book at a time. But in terms of the series, I will vary it a lot. I'm not somebody who will sit down and read one series straight through. I do try to be a completionist, though, and I like to finish series, which unfortunately, BookTube doesn't really reward you for reading 10-book series or 14-book series or 16-book series in a way, does it? I mean, you get a lot more buzz around that first book. And then if you were to make reviews on every book in a series, you see the numbers of views dwindling as you go further and further into the series because fewer people have read, all the way to the end. So, but I'm definitely a completionist. I like to finish the series that I'm started. And I feel somewhat guilty about some of the series that I have let languish, let's say, for a very long time. I've taken forever to get to book 7 of Dresden, for example. And I like the books. I just haven't been able to, and I used them initially as just sort of in between Malazan or, other things.